This month, I upgraded my trusty Sony A7IV to this, the Sony A7R5. And I know in my review of the Sony A7IV, I said how it's still a fantastic all-around camera for professional and recreational shooters even now in 2026. But as someone who is getting more and more serious about wildlife photography, I started feeling a little bit limited by it in certain situations. I made the mistake of trying out a friend's camera, his A7R5, and there were a few features that made me realize I was missing out. And basically over a weekend, I realized it was time to upgrade. So here it is, the A7R5, and let's talk about the main reasons I upgraded, and hopefully it will help any of you out there who may be considering purchasing this camera outright, or maybe looking to make an upgrade yourself like I did. Just an FYI, I also do shoot portraiture as well as video, of course, but I am mostly using this camera for stills, despite this being a very, very capable video camera with 8K video, etc. But we'll maybe cover that in another video. I will be doing a full review of this camera once I've had it for a few more months. So make sure you hit subscribe to see that. So let's kick off with the first reason I upgraded, and that is simply the resolution. This has 61 megapixels versus the A7 IV, which has 33. Now, don't get me wrong, 33 megapixels provides a very decent amount of resolution, but having almost double that means you get so much more cropping power. It gives you so much more flexibility to crop smaller or distant wildlife, and in effect, it lets you extend your reach, so to speak, without needing a longer lens. By the way, I did buy a longer lens too. That also means greater detail retention when you crop. So here's a couple of side-by-sides of this beautiful kingfisher that was around the same distance away, and there's a very, very really noticeable difference in detail with the A7R5 image versus that of the A7 IV. This also helps too when you're using the crop sensor mode. I think it's like 26 megapixels on the R5, and I think you only get like 14 on the A7 IV. And of course, an increase in post flexibility is hugely beneficial for all types of photography, whether you're doing portraiture or landscape as well as wildlife. As a portrait shooter myself, I am really excited, what that extra resolution will mean in terms of like skin details for retouching and latitude for cropping portrait compositions. Another huge reason for upgrading is the newer autofocus and subject dedication that you get in these newer Sony bodies. The A7R5 features Sony's new AI processing unit that has far more advanced subject recognition. It basically has a dedicated chip that helps improve the autofocus.
Should I hear a chip joke?
Yes.
What's Chip's favorite day?
What?
Friday.
It allows for specific AF settings for birds, for animals, insects, humans, and even like vehicles. You can even dial in the settings for things like prioritizing the eye, the head, or body, depending on a certain situation, and then even more customizable settings that frankly I haven't really experimented with yet because it's very, very overwhelming. I've just kind of left everything at the default medium setting. And the AI chip also has pose estimation, so it's able to track subjects far more reliably, even when the eyes aren't visible. So in the real world, an example might be a bird that's perched up on a tree. The A7 IV might not know that there's a bird there if the bird is looking away. However, the A7 V will know that there's a bird there. It can see the body and it will wait for that bird to turn its eyes, and then straight away it will snap onto that eye. Now the A7 IV had very good autofocus, but doesn't feature any of these more advanced settings. So in certain situations, for example, that bush with lots of branches in the way, it did sometimes struggle to find the subject, and then, the bird flew away. Whereas with the A7R5, while it's not perfect every time, it's far more reliable. I've also found that it's just much, much more reliable when the subject moves erratically with better lock-on consistency. The autofocus just feels so much more sticky on the A7R5, and the eye detect is also much stronger even when the subject is much further away. Obviously, all of that crosses over to human eye and face detect as well. Next, we have to talk about the improved image stabilization. Now, the A7 IV I think has 5.5 stops of IBIS versus 9 stops on the A7R5. This is a huge help not only in video, of course, but also with handheld shooting and keeping your shots nice and sharp, particularly with those long telephoto lenses, and also very handy improving the keeper rate in low light wildlife situations, and also for those birds in flight. I also have to mention a couple of quality of life upgrades that have really made a big difference that I didn't really realize at first. So firstly, the EVF, it now has a 9.44 million dot viewfinder versus I think it's like 3.69 million on the A7 IV. So this makes it so much easier to confirm critical focus in real time, and also makes it much more clearer for tracking subjects that are smaller or further away. And also the screen itself, it's this fully articulating and tilting hybrid screen. It's so much better in terms of like being able to get like ground level wildlife angles. I didn't realize this was different, but now that I have used it and have it, I don't think I'd be able to go back to the regular fold out ones on the A7 IV. So those are like the key reasons why I decided to upgrade. Now at one point I did consider the A9 III, you know, the one with the crazy burst rate, but that camera is A, crazy expensive, and B, the max resolution is like 24 megapixels, I think. So that's even less than the A7 IV. So while it might be great for action and birds in flight, my style of wildlife photography is more about like portraits. So this felt like the better fit for me. Plus I was able to get a used model of this camera for around about £2,400 here in the UK. So, you know, it was a lot more affordable as well. So real talk, who shouldn't upgrade? So if you already have a camera that's like the A7 IV, if you mostly shoot like portraits or just dabble in wildlife, you're not someone who needs to crop too much, or if you already nail focus consistently, I would say it maybe isn't worth it for you. We also have to talk about the fact that the file sizes for the A7R5 are huge, particularly uncompressed raw files. So file size, storage, workflow, you know, having the technology to handle all that, those are all things that you have to consider as well. But I do think this is a great upgrade for those of you who are more serious about wildlife photography when subjects are further away as well, or maybe you just shoot action in general, sports, cars, planes that are further away. Then that cropping ability, the more advanced autofocus feature, makes the R5 a much more powerful camera in my opinion. Anyway, like I said, I will definitely do a full-on, you know, proper review of this camera at some point, once I've had it for like a good 3 to 6 months or so, or I've had, you know, lots of time to shoot with it. But my initial impressions are very, very good. I am very happy with the upgrade so far. But let me know your thoughts, and also let me know what camera you're using for wildlife. I'd love to know. Unless you're using like Fujifilm or something, like for wildlife. Like what are you doing with your life? Like get a proper wildlife, get a Canon at least. Anyway, let's end it there. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you like this content, do consider hitting that subscribe button and give this video a like and a comment. You can also follow us on Instagram if that's your thing. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Peace.
Why did the chip go to the doctor?
Why?
It was feeling a bit salty.
I'm feeling salty right now. Cut, stop, just stop.